Now, as we started to talk about earlier, the great thing about these valves is that not only are they good for allowing blood to flow from one chamber to the next, but they're incredibly important for preventing blood from flowing in the opposite direction of what we wanted, something that would be called retrograde flow. But something to keep in mind is that we saw two separate valves on the right side of the heart. And so while this right side of the heart is functioning, we need a little bit of coordination between these valves. So to demonstrate this, let's take the process of the right ventricle contracting. To recall, the right ventricle is the structure that receives deoxygenated blood from the right atrium and seeks to pump that blood into the pulmonary artery so that we can eventually get it to the lungs. Now, once this ventricle contracts, the blood is going to want to go anywhere but inside the ventricle. Think about if you had a balloon full of water and you squeeze the balloon, that water is going to come flying out. And so what we need in order to have a successful coordinated right ventricular contraction is for the tricuspid valve, which again sits right between the right atrium and the right ventricle, to be closed to prevent blood from flowing from the right ventricle backwards into the right atrium. And at the same time, we need the pulmonary semilunar valve, which sits between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery, to go ahead and open up for us. Therefore, we can empty the blood contents of the ventricle without anything flowing backwards into the right atrium. And then off of that, the next thing to consider is what happens when that right ventricle relaxes and is no longer in a contracting state. Well, in this case, we're going to start thinking about refilling the ventricle with blood from the atrium, and so we're going to need our valves to kind of switch what they're doing. It is at this phase that we actually want the tricuspid or AV valve to be open, and we want the pulmonary semilunar valve to now close so that nothing from the pulmonary artery flows backwards into the right ventricle. If this occurs, then of course we will be able to refill the ventricle from the atrium, and nothing will come back into the ventricle from the pulmonary artery.